Imagine a world where penguins ruled the north. Not the small, tuxedoed birds of Antarctica, but giants. Standing nearly a meter tall, they commanded the icy cliffs of the North Atlantic, from the shores of Canada to the remote islands of Scotland. This is the story of the Great Auk, a bird so magnificent, so numerous, that sailors once navigated by the sheer size of their colonies. A creature that conquered the brutal northern seas, only to be erased from the face of the earth by human hands. This is the tragic tale of the North Atlantic's lost king. For millennia, the Great Auk, or Pinguinus impinus, was a symbol of the untamed wild. Its story begins long before human history was ever recorded. Fossil evidence suggests these birds thrived for at least 100,000 years, perfectly adapted to a life split between the unforgiving ocean and desolate rocky shores. They were the original penguins, a name later given to their southern hemisphere lookalikes. Unlike their southern counterparts, however, the Great Auk belonged to the family of auks, murres, and puffins. But it was the only member of its family to have lost the ability to fly. Why give up the sky? The answer lies in the water. The Great Auk was an evolutionary masterpiece of marine adaptation. Its wings, small and stubby, became powerful flippers, propelling it through the water with incredible speed and agility. It was a torpedo in bird form, capable of diving to depths of over 75 meters and holding its breath for up to 15 minutes. It hunted fish like capelin and sandlance with lethal precision, outswimming its prey in the frigid depths. On land, it was clumsy, waddling upright with a dignified, if slightly awkward, gait. But in the ocean, it was a sovereign. Its dense, waterproof feathers and a thick layer of fat provided insulation against the bone-chilling cold of the North Atlantic, making it a true master of its environment. For centuries, indigenous peoples of the North Atlantic, including the Beothuk of Newfoundland and the Sakik of Greenland, coexisted with the Great Auks. They hunted the birds for their meat, eggs, and feathers, but their impact was sustainable. The bird was deeply woven into their culture. Some were even buried with great auk beaks, suggesting a spiritual significance. The auk populations, estimated to be in the millions, remained stable. They were a reliable resource, a part of the natural rhythm of life in the far north. The birds nested in colossal, dense colonies on just a handful of remote, predator-free islands. This strategy was effective against natural threats like polar bears and Arctic foxes, but it would soon become their fatal flaw. The arrival of European explorers in the late 15th century marked the beginning of the end. Two sailors on long, arduous transatlantic voyages. These massive, flightless birds were a godsend. They were an easy source of fresh meat, oil, and even bait. Unlike the indigenous hunters, the Europeans had no concept of sustainable harvesting. They saw the Great Auk colonies not as a part of a delicate ecosystem, but as an inexhaustible commodity. The birds, having no land predators, were utterly fearless of humans. Sailors could simply walk up to them and club them to death. They were herded onto ships by the hundreds, sometimes driven up planks directly into the holds. The killing was indiscriminate and brutally efficient. The scale of the slaughter is hard to comprehend. On Funk Island, off the coast of Newfoundland, one of the largest nesting sites, sailors set up temporary camps. They rendered the birds for their fat, using the oily carcasses of other auks as fuel for the fires. The demand for their feathers particularly for stuffing mattresses and pillows, created a new, voracious industry. Feather-gathering expeditions would strip the islands bare. Eggs, larger than any other seabirds, were a delicacy and collected by the barrelful. An entire species was being systematically liquidated for profit and convenience. By the early 19th century, the Great Auk was in a catastrophic decline. The once steaming colonies were reduced to silence. Funk Island was deserted. The only remaining birds clung to existence on a few inaccessible rocky stacks off the coast of Iceland. As the bird became rarer, a new, more sinister threat emerged. The collectors, natural history museums, and wealthy private collectors, realizing the species was on the brink of extinction, suddenly desired specimens. A dead Great Auk, once worth pennies for its meat, became a priceless trophy. This created a perverse new market, where the rarity of the bird only increased the price on its head, accelerating the hunt for the last survivors. The final act of this tragedy unfolded on June 3, 1844, on the small, volcanic island of Eldey, off the coast of Iceland. A team of 3 men arrived on the island with a specific mission: to secure specimens for a collector. They spotted a pair of great auks, the very last of their kind, tending to a single egg. The birds, true to their nature, did not flee. They were easily captured and strangled. In the chaos, one of the men crushed the last great auk egg under his boot. And just like that, after 100,000 years of reigning over the northern seas, the great auk was gone forever. The 2 birds they killed are now on display in museums, silent testaments to a world that no longer exists. The extinction of the Great Auk is more than just a sad story. It was a wake-up call. It was one of the first times that people in the Western world recognized that human actions could cause a species to completely vanish. It helped fuel the early conservation movements in Europe and North America, leading to the first laws protecting wild birds. The tragic fate of the Great Auk served as a stark lesson. Our planet's resources are not infinite, and our actions have profound, and sometimes irreversible, consequences. Today, all that remains of the Great Auk are about 80 preserved skins, a couple dozen skeletons, and around 70 eggs scattered in museum collections around the world. These relics are a haunting reminder of what we have lost. When we look at the puffins and razorbills that still flock to those northern cliffs, we are seeing the Great Auk's smaller, flying cousins. They are a living link to their lost relative, a glimpse into a wilder past. The story of the Great Auk is a cautionary tale etched into the history of our planet. A story of a magnificent king dethroned, not by a natural cataclysm, but by human greed and thoughtlessness. It reminds us of our responsibility to protect the wonders of the natural world before they too become just a memory. Thank you for joining us on this journey into the past. If you found this story moving, please like this video and subscribe to our channel for more tales from the natural world. Let's work together to ensure no more species suffer the same fate as the Great Auk. See you next time. On the stark, windswept islands of the North Atlantic, a drama of new life unfolds. Here, amidst the clamor of a bustling seabird colony, a great auk chick begins its journey. Tapping persistently from within its shell, it breaks free into a world of rock, sea, and sky. The air is cold, but the chick is immediately enveloped by the warmth and protection of its devoted parents. These parents are a formidable team. They have guarded their single, precious egg for weeks, taking turns incubating it against the harsh elements. Now, with their chick hatched, their vigilance only intensifies. Their powerful grooved beaks, once used for catching fish, now serve as a gentle tool for preening and a fearsome weapon against any threat. Look closely at this tiny marvel. Its body is covered in a thick coat of soft, downy feathers, a natural insulation against the biting winds. This down is so dense it almost looks like velvet, providing a crucial buffer in these early, vulnerable days. Its beak, though small, is already a miniature version of its parents, perfectly shaped for the life that awaits it in the ocean. The chick's first movements are clumsy, a series of awkward wobbles and stumbles on large, webbed feet not yet accustomed to solid ground. Each step is a lesson in balance, a tiny victory on the rugged terrain of its island nursery. The parents work tirelessly. One stands guard, its sharp eyes scanning the horizon for predators like opportunistic gulls or Arctic foxes that might patrol the shoreline. The other parent heads out to sea, undertaking long, arduous fishing trips. They dive deep into the frigid waters, pursuing schools of fish like capelin and sand lance. When they return, their beaks are full, delivering a high-energy meal straight to their hungry chick. This rich diet fuels an astonishing growth rate. In just a few weeks, the chick will more than triple in size, rapidly building the strength and fat reserves needed for the next great challenge. Parental care is everything in this unforgiving environment. We see them communicating through a series of low growls and calls, a private language that reinforces their bond. They shield the chick from driving rain and sleet with their own bodies, forming a living, breathing shelter. This constant care is a testament to the powerful instinct to ensure the survival of their lineage. It's a partnership built on shared responsibility and a deep, instinctual connection. The moment of truth arrives sooner than you might expect. After only a few weeks, the chick, now known as a jumpling, is ready to leave the land behind. It's a crucial and perilous transition. Guided by its parents, the young auk makes its way to the cliff's edge. The drop to the churning sea below is daunting, but hesitation is not an option. With a final call of encouragement from its parents, the chick takes a leap of faith. It tumbles through the air, a bundle of down and determination, before splashing into the icy water. For the first time, it is in its true element. The awkwardness seen on land vanishes instantly. Underwater, it is transformed, using its small, powerful wings as flippers. It propels itself through the water with surprising grace and speed, a natural-born diver. Its father, who has been waiting in the water, immediately joins it. From this point on, the male parent will be the chick's sole guardian and teacher for several months. He will guide it through the vast ocean, teaching it how to hunt, how to evade marine predators like orcas, and how to navigate the complex currents of the North Atlantic. The mother, having exhausted her reserves, returns to the sea to regain her strength, her duty on the breeding grounds complete for the year. The young auk's education continues at sea. It learns to dive deeper and stay submerged longer, honing its skills with every passing day. It observes its father, mimicking his movements, mastering the art of the hunt. This period is critical. The chick must quickly learn to be self-sufficient, as the North Atlantic is as full of danger as it is of food. The bond between father and chick is paramount, a lifeline in the open ocean. As summer fades into autumn, the young Great Auk is nearly fully grown. Its downy coat has been replaced by the sleek, waterproof feathers of an adult, its black and white plumage providing perfect camouflage in the water. It is now an adept swimmer and a skilled hunter, a true creature of the sea. It has survived the most challenging period of its life, thanks to the unwavering dedication of its parents and its own innate resilience. The story of the Great Auk chick is a powerful reminder of the delicate balance of life in the wild. It's a saga of extraordinary parental investment, rapid adaptation, and the courage to take a literal leap into the unknown. From a fragile egg on a barren rock to a master of the ocean depths, its journey is a triumph of survival against the odds. Witnessing this cycle of life gives us a profound appreciation for the intricate strategies and enduring bonds that allow species to thrive in the planet's most extreme environments. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of the Great Auk. If you found this story as fascinating as we do, please like, share, and subscribe for more explorations of our planet's amazing wildlife. We'll see you next time. Beneath the relentless Arctic sun, where ice meets the turbulent sea, a ghost from the past still hunts. This is the realm of the Great Auk, a bird that ruled the North Atlantic for millennia. Though they vanished from our world over a century ago, through the magic of storytelling, we can journey back and witness their incredible existence. Imagine a world draped in white, where the only sounds are the crack of shifting ice and the cry of the wind. Here, on a remote, rocky island, a bustling colony of great auks thrives. They are a picture of elegance and power, standing upright like sentinels in their striking black and white plumage. But their true majesty is revealed not on land, but beneath the waves. With a swift, decisive plunge, an adult great auk pierces the water's surface. Down it goes, transforming from a slightly awkward, land-bound bird into a streamlined torpedo of breathtaking efficiency. Its powerful wings, once used for balance on the rocky shores, now become flippers, propelling it through the frigid depths with astonishing speed and grace. This is a world of ethereal blue light, where icebergs loom like underwater mountains. The auk navigates this maze with instinctual precision, its sharp eyes scanning the shoals of fish that glitter in the filtered sunlight. Its primary targets are capelin and sand lance, fish rich in the oils needed to survive in this unforgiving environment. The hunt is a display of explosive energy. Spotting a school of fish, the auk accelerates, a black and white blur against the deep blue. Its neck extends, its formidable beak, grooved and powerful, snaps shut with incredible speed. In a flash, a fish is caught, but the hunt is far from over. This underwater ballet is fraught with peril. A shadow detaches from the seaflora Greenland shark. An ancient predator stirs from its slow patrol. The auk, ever vigilant, senses the subtle shift in water pressure and alters its course, its agility keeping it just out of the predator's reach. Up above, a white-tailed eagle might circle, a threat from the air. Every moment is a calculation of risk and reward. The great auk was a master of endurance. Dives could last for several minutes, reaching depths of over 75 meters, a remarkable feat for a bird. This required immense physiological adaptations, including the ability to store large amounts of oxygen in its blood and muscles. It was a perfectly evolved diving machine. Energy conservation was key. Every movement was deliberate, every calorie burned, a precious commodity. After a successful hunt, with its beak full of fish, the auk begins its ascent. It surfaces with a spray of water, shakes its head, and with a few powerful wing beats, launches itself towards the colony. From the air, we see the sheer scale of their world. Hundreds, thousands of birds, the island, their calls, creating a constant, humming symphony of life. The returning hunter navigates the throng, recognizing the unique call of its mate and chick amidst the clamor. The chick, a fluffy ball of downy feathers, waits eagerly in the simple scrape nest on the bare rock. The transfer of food is a tender moment, a vital link in the chain of survival. The parents share the duties of hunting and guarding, a partnership forged against the harsh realities of the Arctic. They were devoted parents, raising a single chick each year, pouring all their energy into ensuring its survival. Life in the colony was a constant drama. Territorial disputes were settled with jousting beaks and loud calls. The social bonds were strong, a collective defense against predators and the elements. They stood shoulder to shoulder, a community thriving on the edge of the world. But a new predator was on the horizon, one they could not outsmart or outfly. Humans, arriving in ships, saw not a magnificent bird, but a resource. Their flightlessness, which made them so successful in the water, made them tragically vulnerable on land. The story of the Great Auk is not just one of natural history. It's a poignant lesson. It's a story of a creature perfectly adapted to its world, living in balance with its environment for countless generations. It reminds us of the fragility of life and the profound impact we have on the natural world. As we imagine the last great auks standing on their lonely rock stack off the coast of Iceland, we are left with a sense of immense loss. We lost not just a species, but a marvel of evolution, a symbol of the wild, untamed North. Their calls are silent now, their colonies empty. But by remembering them, by telling their story, we keep their spirit alive. We honor their existence and carry forward the crucial lesson they taught us: to cherish and protect the incredible biodiversity that still graces our planet. The ocean is quieter without them, the North a little emptier. The ghost of the Great Auk haunts the icy waters, a silent testament to a world that once was. Thank you for joining us on this journey back in time. If you found this story moving, please like this video and subscribe for more explorations into the wonders of the natural world. For millennia, the ocean's rhythm was its own, vast, seemingly endless, a world teeming with life, governed by tides and seasons. But then, a new force arrived on its shores, one driven by an insatiable hunger and relentless ambition. Humanity began to look to the sea, not just for sustenance, but for conquest. Our journey across the waves began. Wooden ships, small but determined, sliced through the North Atlantic. On board, explorers and fishermen, driven by the promise of new lands and untold riches. They were pioneers, charting the unknown, but their maps were often drawn with the blood of the creatures they encountered. The ocean's bounties seemed limitless, an inexhaustible larder for a growing species. On remote, rocky islands, they found a treasure trove, not of gold or spices, but of flesh, fat, and feathers. They found the Great Auk, a magnificent bird, standing nearly a meter tall, flightless, and perfectly adapted to the cold northern waters. For tens of thousands of years, they had thrived here, in colonies that numbered in the hundreds of thousands. They were the penguins of the north, masters of their icy domain. To the sailors, these birds were a godsend. They were easy to catch, unafraid of humans, having known no land predators. They were a walking, swimming pantry. The men would lay planks from their ships to the shore and simply herd the bewildered auks aboard. They were harvested for their meat, which fed crews on long voyages. Their fat was rendered into oil to light lamps back home. Their eggs, a seasonal delicacy, were collected by the barrelful. Even their feathers became a valuable commodity, stuffing pillows and mattresses in Europe. Early accounts from explorers describe the sheer abundance. Islands so crowded with great auks that it was difficult to walk without stepping on a nest. The air would have been filled with their calls, a constant, living symphony. Historical illustrations from the 16th and 17th centuries depict these scene ships anchored offshore, men clubbing birds. The scale of the hunt almost industrial even then, but this relentless pressure began to take its toll. What was once a population of millions began to dwindle. The colonies, once vast and sprawling, started to shrink. Each year the ships returned, and each year they found fewer birds. The once deafening chorus of the Auk colonies grew fainter. The very islands that had pulsed with life were becoming silent. The demand never waned. As the birds became scarcer, their value only increased. Collectors and museums, realizing the species was on the brink, suddenly desired specimens. A new, more sinister hunt began not for food, but for trophies. The last remaining birds were pursued with a grim determination, their rarity sealing their fate. Every sighting was a death sentence. Subtle shifts were also happening in the world around them. The climate was changing. The Little Ice Age was giving way to a warmer period. Sea ice patterns shifted, affecting the auks' feeding grounds. But these were slow, gradual pressures. The fatal blow was delivered by human hands. The climate may have loaded the gun, but we pulled the trigger. Imagine the scene on Funk Island, off Newfoundland, once the largest Great Auk colony in the world. Where hundreds of thousands of birds once nested, there was now just barren rock, stained with the memory of what was lost. The wind would whistle across empty ledges, a haunting requiem for a species. The final act of this tragedy played out on a desolate skerry off the coast of Iceland, an island named Eldey by 1844. This was the last known refuge for the Great Auk. A tiny, precarious population clung to existence on this volcanic rock. On June 3rd of that year, 3 fishermen landed on the island. They had been hired by a collector who wanted specimens. They found a single pair, the very last, nesting and guarding a single egg. The men chased them. The flightless birds, clumsy on land, stumbled over the volcanic rock. They were caught and killed. In the chaos, one of the fishermen crushed the last egg under his boot, and with that single thoughtless act, an entire species was erased from the planet forever. The silence that followed was absolute. No more calls echoing across the water. No more sleek forms diving for fish. An evolutionary story millions of years in the making was brought to an abrupt and brutal end. We look back now at the Great Auk as a cautionary tale, a symbol of extinction driven by human greed. We see the historical drawings not as proud depictions of exploration, but as grim records of a slaughter. The empty nesting grounds are a stark monument to our capacity for destruction. When we look at the world's oceans today, we see echoes of this story everywhere. Overfishing, habitat destruction, the relentless pursuit of resources. The story of the Great Auk is not just a historical event, it is a warning. It reminds us that limitless is an illusion, and that the consequences of our actions can be irreversible. The fate of this one bird serves as a powerful reminder of our responsibility. The planet's biodiversity is a fragile, intricate web, and every species, no matter how small or remote, plays a part. When we break a thread, we weaken the entire fabric of life. The silence left by the Great Auk is a void we can never fill, a lesson we must never forget. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider supporting conservation efforts in your area. Subscribe for more stories about our planet's incredible and sometimes tragic history. Imagine a world painted in shades of gray and white, a world of jagged cliffs, restless seas, and a biting wind that carries the scent of salt and ice. This was the kingdom of the Great Auk, a majestic, flightless seabird that stood nearly 3 feet tall, a true giant of the northern oceans. For thousands of years, they thrived, their colonies teeming with life, their calls echoing across the icy waters of the North Atlantic. They were the penguins of the North, masters of their domain, perfectly adapted to a life spent between the frigid sea and remote rocky islands. Their striking black and white plumage made them look like they were dressed in formal attire, ready for a grand oceanic ball. They were powerful swimmers, using their stubby wings to fly through the water with incredible grace and speed, hunting for fish with lethal precision. On land, they were devoted parents, laying a single precious egg each year, which they would guard with unwavering dedication. But their world was about to change, irrevocably and tragically. The very traits that made them so successful, their lack of flight, their tendency to nest in dense, accessible colonies, and their complete lack of fear towards a new predator would seal their doom. That new predator was us. For centuries, indigenous peoples had hunted the Great Auk sustainably. But with the arrival of European sailors, what was once a respectful harvest became a relentless slaughter. These birds were seen not as magnificent creatures, but as a convenient resource. They were walking larders, their meat providing food, their fat fueling lamps, and their feathers stuffing mattresses. Sailors would herd them by the hundreds onto their ships. The birds, unable to fly away, could only waddle towards their fate. Historical accounts describe scenes of unimaginable cruelty, where birds were driven onto planks and straight into the boiling cauldrons on board ships. The scale of the hunt was industrial, long before the Industrial Revolution had even begun. Island colonies that once held hundreds of thousands of birds were wiped clean in just a few seasons. By the early 19th century, the Great Auk was teetering on the brink of extinction. Their once vast kingdom had shrunk to a single, desolate rock off the coast of Iceland called Eldey. This remote, volcanic islet became the last refuge for a dying species. The world, which had once been so careless, suddenly took notice. Now, the Great Auk wasn't just a source of meat and feathers, it was a rarity. And rarity, in the eyes of collectors and museums, has a price. A perverse and fatal irony began to unfold. The very people who wanted to preserve the memory of the Great Auk were now driving the final nails into its coffin. Museums and wealthy private collectors offered huge sums of money for skins and eggs, creating a frantic, morbid gold rush for the last living specimens. The final act of this tragedy took place on June 3, 1844. On that fateful day, 3 Icelandic fishermen landed on Eldey. They had been sent on a mission by a merchant who wanted specimens to sell. On the barren rock, they found the very last breeding pair of great auks on Earth. The birds were guarding their single, precious egg. What happened next is a moment that should forever haunt our collective conscience. The fishermen, with no thought for the significance of their actions, chased down the two adults. The panicked birds, clumsy on land, tried to escape but stood no chance. They were caught and strangled. In the chaos of the capture, one of the fishermen crushed the last egg under his boot. And just like that, with a sickening crunch and two silent deaths on a lonely rock, a species that had existed for millennia was gone forever. The echoes of their calls faded into the sea mist, and the North Atlantic fell silent. The story of the Great Auk is more than just a sad tale about a bygone bird. It's a profound and painful lesson. It's a mirror reflecting the destructive power of human greed and our devastating capacity for short-sightedness. We didn't just lose a bird, we erased a unique and irreplaceable strand from the web of life. We lost the chance to see a true giant of the northern seas, to witness its incredible underwater flight, to hear its calls carried on the Arctic wind. We are left only with ghosts' faded drawings in old books, dusty specimens behind museum glass, and a handful of fragile, priceless eggs. When we look at a reconstructed skeleton of a great auk in a museum today, we are looking at a monument to our own failure. We see its powerful frame, its robust beak, and imagine what it must have been like to see it alive, standing proudly on an icy shore. It's a stark reminder that extinction is not some abstract concept. It is real, it is brutal, and it is final. There is no going back. The Great Auk's last flight, a clumsy, desperate scramble on a rocky island, was an ending, we wrote. But its story must not end in despair. It must serve as a catalyst for change. Today, countless other species stand where the Great Auk once stood, on the precipice of oblivion, threatened by habitat loss, climate change, and human activity. From the majestic polar bear in the Arctic to the tiny golden frog in the rainforests of Panama, the silent march towards extinction continues. The story of the Great Auk implores us to look at the world around us with new eyes, with a sense of urgency and responsibility. It teaches us that conservation is not a choice. It is a moral imperative. We are the only species capable of understanding the concept of extinction, and therefore, we are the only species capable of preventing it. We must learn from the tragic fate of the Great Auk. We must champion the cause of those who cannot speak for themselves. We must protect the wild places, reduce our impact on the planet, and foster a culture of respect for all living things. Let the silent cliffs where the Great Auks once nested be a constant reminder of what we have lost, and more importantly, what we still stand to lose. Their ghost is a guardian, a silent sentinel warning us from the past. Let's not allow their tragedy to be repeated. Let's work together to ensure that no more haunting silences fall upon our world. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider sharing it. The more people who know the story of the Great Auk, the more power we have to write a different ending for the species at risk today. Subscribe for more stories about our incredible planet and our place within it. Imagine a world where penguins roamed the North Atlantic. Not the penguins we know today from the icy south, but a different kind, a giant among seabirds. This is the story of the Great Auk, a bird lost to time and a cautionary tale for our own era. Our journey begins on a desolate, storm-lashed rock stack off the coast of Iceland. The year is 1844. The air is thick with sea spray and the cries of gulls, but a deeper, more resonant call is missing. A sound that once filled these northern skies is now reduced to a haunting echo. Here, on this lonely outcrop called Eldey, a pair of great auks stands against the unforgiving wind. They are the last of their kind. Let's rewind the clock. For thousands of years, the great auk, or Pinguinus impennis, was the king of the North Atlantic, standing nearly a meter tall, with a powerful, hooked beak and a striking black and white plumage. It was a truly magnificent creature. Unlike most birds, it was completely flightless. Its wings, small and paddle-like, were perfectly adapted not for the sky, but for the sea. They were underwater aviators, flying through the frigid waters with incredible speed and grace, hunting fish and crustaceans. Their colonies were vast, sprawling cities of birds on rocky islands from Canada to the British Isles and Scandinavia. Sailors and explorers wrote of their sheer numbers, describing islands so crowded with great auks that it was difficult to walk without stepping on them. They were a cornerstone of the North Atlantic ecosystem, a vital part of the food web for coastal communities, especially indigenous peoples like the Beathok of Newfoundland. The Great Auk was a source of food, oil, and feathers for millennia, harvested sustainably in a delicate balance. But the arrival of European explorers and commercial hunters in the 15th century marked the beginning of the end. To these newcomers, the great auks were not fellow inhabitants of a shared world. They were a resource to be exploited, flightless, trusting, and nesting in dense, accessible colonies. They were tragically easy targets. Ships would stop at their nesting islands, and sailors would herd them by the hundreds onto their vessels. The birds were used as fresh meat for long voyages. Their eggs were collected in vast quantities, and their feathers became a valuable commodity for stuffing mattresses and pillows. The scale of the slaughter was unimaginable. Entire colonies, once teeming with hundreds of thousands of birds, were wiped out in a matter of decades. The demand was relentless. In some cases, the birds were even used as fuel, their oily bodies thrown directly onto fires to render fat from their companions. It was a brutal, short-sighted massacre driven by pure commercial greed. As their numbers plummeted, the great auk became rarer and rarer, and as it became rarer, a new, more insidious threat emerged. The collectors, museums, and wealthy private individuals, realizing the species was on the brink of extinction, suddenly desired specimens. A dead great auk, or even just its egg, became a priceless trophy. This created a perverse incentive. Instead of trying to save the last remaining birds, hunters were now paid exorbitant sums to kill them. The very act of preserving their memory in a museum collection helped to seal their doom. This brings us back to that wind-swept rock Eldey in June of 1844. The last known colony on the island of Glascar had been destroyed by a volcanic eruption a decade earlier, forcing the few survivors to this more vulnerable, accessible location. The two birds we see huddling together are guarding a single precious egg. They are the last hope for their species. But hope is a fragile thing. A boat carrying 3 fishermen lands on the island. They haven't come for food or feathers. They've been hired by a collector who wants the ultimate prize. The men scramble up the rocks. The auks, clumsy on land, try to waddle away, but there's nowhere to go. In a few tragic moments, the 2 adult birds are captured and killed. In the chaos, one of the men crushes the last egg under his boot, And with that final, senseless act of destruction, the Great Auk is gone forever. The last flight of the Great Auk was its dive into the sea, but its true last flight, the one of hope and survival, ended on that rock, taking with it our chance to ever see this giant of the northern seas. Today, all we have left are ghosts and echoes. We have about 80 stuffed specimens in museums around the world, along with skeletons and eggshells. When you stand before a reconstructed skeleton, you're struck by its sheer size, towering over its modern relatives like razorbills and guillemots. You see the powerful build, the adaptations for an aquatic life, and you can only imagine what it must have been like to see them in the flesh, diving and soaring through the ocean depths. Scientists today study their bones, analyzing DNA to piece together their evolutionary history and understand their place in the ecosystem they once dominated. These remains are more than just scientific curiosities. They are a direct link to a lost world, a tangible reminder of what we have squandered. Each bone tells a story of a life lived and a lineage cut short. The story of the Great Auk is not just a sad piece of history. It's a mirror reflecting our own actions, the forces that drove it to extinction, overexploitation, greed, and a shocking disregard for the natural world are still very much at play today. Countless species, from the majestic rhino to the humble bee, face similar threats. We are living through a new mass extinction event, one driven almost entirely by human activity. But unlike the fishermen on Eldie, we have the benefit of hindsight. We know what happens when we push a species to the brink. We have the science to understand the complex web of life and the consequences of breaking its strands. The question is, have we learned the lesson? When we look at the misty cliffs where the great auks once nested, we shouldn't just feel sadness. We should feel a sense of responsibility. The silence of those cliffs is a warning. The haunting, imagined call of the Great Auk is a call to action. It urges us to protect what we still have, to fight for the biodiversity of our planet, and to ensure that no other species suffers the same fate. The Great Auk's story ended in 1844, but its legacy is written in every conservation effort, in every protected area, and in the heart of every person who believes that our world is richer with every species we share it with. Let's not let their silence be in vain. Let's make our own time an era of preservation, not extinction. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, please consider supporting organizations dedicated to wildlife conservation. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories from our planet's past and present.